Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. For those that are new to my YouTube channel, subscribe immediately to see more content, and also leave a comment down below to suggest more amazing kinds of videos. Bring in part 6 of What If Spider-Man MCU entered Damnchi. Link down in description of the fan fiction This What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 11 In the Eye of the Storm. As Belle and Peter continued their journey towards the dungeon, a sense of anticipation mingled with apprehension hung in the air. The events of yesterday's venture were still fresh in their minds, reminding them of the risks lurking within the dungeon. "Hey, Peter," Belle interjected, breaking the silence, "we should buy some potions before heading in. Our supply is running dangerously low, especially after yesterday's ordeal. I know a pharmacy nearby." Quote. Peter raised an eyebrow at yet another modern term in this seemingly medieval world. "Good thinking, Belle. Lead the way," he said. Peter slipped on his mask to communicate directly with Jane. "Jane, any advice for today's dungeon dive? We're aiming to maximize our earnings." "Absolutely, Peter," she responded, her tone calm and measured. "Stick to floors 7 through 9 for the best loot to risk ratio." Peter nodded thoughtfully at Jane's astute advice. "What about delving deeper?" he inquired, his curiosity piqued. "Not advisable," Jane cautioned. "Once you reach the 10th floor, you'll face larger and more formidable foes like orcs and infant dragons. Your knives won't cut it against them. Invest in longer-reaching weapons before venturing there." Peter nodded in understanding, grateful for Jane's insights. "Got it," he acknowledged. "Any dangers up to the 9th floor?" he asked, his mind flashing back to yesterday's ambush by war shadows. Jane's response was swift and informative. "Expect encounters with purple moths on 7th floor and below. Stock up on antidotes to neutralize their poisonous powder," she advised. "And watch out for killer ants. They use pheromones to attract companions if injured, so make sure to dispatch them swiftly. Also, don't waste time or bag space collecting stones from upper floor monsters. It's not worth it. It's recommendable to destroy them instead." Peter asked, confused. "Destroy them? Why make the effort?" Jane made an interesting point. "Monsters can become stronger by eating the magic crystals of other monsters. They can also become irregular monsters with unpredictable powers if they eat enough crystals. Hence it's the common practice to destroy them if you don't collect them." "Thanks for the heads up, Jane. We'll definitely take your advice into account," Peter acknowledged gratefully. He silently thanked his decision to spend time in the library scanning books into Jane's database yesterday. They arrived at a weathered, dilapidated shop adorned with a faded sign reading, "Blue Pharmacy." The exterior hardly inspired confidence, but stepping inside, Peter found the interior surprisingly clean, albeit showing its age. At the counter stood a girl with long brown hair, vibrant purple eyes, and distinctive dog ears and tail. Her attire was equally unique, with a skirt designed to accommodate her tail and a peculiar shirt featuring asymmetric sleeves, one short, the other long enough to cover her right arm. A glove adorned her right hand, adding to her enigmatic appearance. As Belle approached, the girl greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome back, Belle," she said cheerfully, her eyes flicking towards Peter's integrated suit and mask with curiosity. "And who's this?" she inquired, her gaze lingering on Peter with interest as Belle made the introductions. "This is Peter," Belle replied, gesturing towards his companion. "Peter, meet Naza, the pharmacist and captain of the Mayak Familia." Naza extended a hand towards Peter in greeting, her smile widening. "Nice to meet you, Peter," she said warmly. "What brings you two here today?" As Peter reached out to shake Naza's hand, his fingers brushed against the fabric of her sleeve. Though hidden from view, he felt a subtle rigidity beneath the cloth, a telltale sign of something unusual beneath. He guessed it was a prosthetic limb, but he didn't want to pry. As Belle ordered a few low-level health potions, Naza placed the red liquid vials on the counter. Jane's voice chimed in through his mask's earphones. "Peter, can you take out a health potion you bought from the guild yesterday and hold it beside one of these?" Peter retrieved one from his backpack and picked up one from the counter, holding them side by side for comparison. Jane continued, "I can pick up faint amounts of radiation emitting from the vials. But the one from this shop seems to have significantly less radiation. I suspect that these are lower quality than what the guild is selling." "How much do these potions cost?" Peter inquired. Naza seemed to fidget guiltily as she stammered, 300 valis per piece. Peter turned to Belle, asking, "How much does the guild charge for these?" Bell looked confused. I think the guild charges the same. All pharmacies charge the same amount for low potions like these, I think. Peter turned back to Naza. I want to talk to your boss. Naza stammered, What do you mean? Bell chimed in helpfully, he wants to talk to your god, giving Peter a curious glance. Naza's expression shifted to fear. Why do you need to talk to him? I can assist you if you have any problem. Peter's expression remained stern as he replied, I have concerns about the quality of these potions. I want to discuss it with your god. Naza hesitated for a moment, clearly conflicted. Then, with a resigned nod, Naza retreated to the back side of the shop. A figure of distinction, his long, dark blue hair flowing down his back like a cascade, and his piercing dark blue eyes exuding an aura of authority, emerged from the back room, clad in a sleek black robe. He greeted Bell with a warm smile, his voice resonating with familiarity. Ah, Bell, how have you been? And how is our beloved Hestia faring? Returning the smile with genuine warmth, Bell offered a respectful bow. Lord Myak, I am well, thank you for inquiring. As for Goddess Hestia, she is in good spirits. In fact, she quit her job today, as our dungeon expeditions now suffice to support our familia. Myak's smile widened at the news. Is that so? I'm delighted to hear it. Please convey my regards to her, and tell her I look forward to a special treat now that your familia is thriving. Turning his attention to Peter, Myak regarded him with a curious glance, though he made no mention of the mask. And who might this be? He inquired, his tone polite yet inquisitive. Bell proceeded with the introductions. Lord Myak, allow me to introduce Peter. He's an esteemed companion and invaluable member of our familia. With a gracious nod, Myak extended his hand towards Peter, his demeanor welcoming. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Peter. How may I be of assistance to you? He inquired, his tone indicating genuine interest. Peter clasped Myak's hand firmly, returning the greeting with a polite smile. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Lord Myak, he acknowledged. Peter couldn't help but sense a special connection between Myak and their familia, evident in the god's demeanor. With a hint of hesitation, Peter continued, I wanted to bring something to your attention, sir. He presented the vials in his hands, his tone measured yet earnest. These potions that are being sold at your pharmacy are of lower quality than the ones the guild is selling for the same price. Myak appeared genuinely perplexed, taking the vials from Peter and inspecting them closely. He sniffed at the contents before sampling a few drops from both vials. Turning to Naza with a stern yet composed voice, Myak confronted her, this young man speaks the truth. What is the meaning of this, Naza? Tell me the truth. Naza visibly shrank, tears welling up in her eyes as she confessed, I was diluting the potions with colored water. I didn't think anybody would be able to tell the difference. I had no choice. We are in debt, and we are about to lose this shop. Yet, you keep handing out free potions to people. Her voice cracked with emotion as she struggled to continue. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered, her tears now flowing freely. The god was clearly at a loss for words, his expression a mix of disappointment and regret. Bell, the ever-compassionate soul, extended his hand to comfort Naza. He offered reassuring words, don't cry, Naza. We'll gladly take your potions. Peter looked incredulously at Bell, musing at his weakness for pretty faces. Bell, you'd probably take those potions even if they were just colored water. It's the sentiment that counts, huh? It's not like we'd need the potions if we're injured or anything, right? Bell's embarrassed blush brought to mind the nickname, Tomato Boy, that Bet had bestowed upon him, prompting a stifled chuckle from Peter. Naza, he admonished, you should never compromise on quality. If you do, you'll eventually lose your reputation and your customers. Myak, realizing the gravity of the situation, bowed before them in apology. I apologize for this, he said earnestly. As compensation, I am giving you these potions free of cost. Peter was taken aback by a deity bowing in apology. Bell quickly answered, we can't accept that, Lord Myak. You have already given me a lot of potions for free till now. Peter's surprise was evident as he shook his head, his determination unyielding. Didn't Naza just say the reason she has to dilute the potions is because you keep giving them away for free? I don't want free potions, sir. I just want proper quality ones for the price we are paying. The god immediately retreated to the back of the shop, returning with new potions. Jane assured him that these potions were of higher quality than the guild's. Peter also ordered a few antidote potions for the purple moths. As they completed the transaction for the potions, Peter couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the tearful Naza. Gods in this world seemed to have their quirks, and this poor girl was evidently saddled with an overly charitable one. With a compassionate glance, he asked, "Is there anything we can do to assist with your debt situation?" Naza's dog ears perked up excitedly and Peter was amused to see that her tail was swinging. She said, "Can you bring us a few blue papilio wings? I assume you're heading to the 7th floor anyway since you bought purple moth antidotes. I'd be more than happy to compensate you with potions of equivalent value." Peter exchanged a glance with Belle, who nodded in agreement. "Sure, we can do that," Peter replied with a smile. "Consider it done." Naza's eyes sparkled with gratitude. "Thank you so much, you have no idea how much this means to me." As they left the pharmacy, Peter turned to Belle with a smile. "Looks like we've got ourselves a little side quest," he remarked, a hint of excitement in his voice. "Peter, this is our first official quest," exclaimed Belle with excitement. Peter, surprised, inquired, "Official quest? Are there official quests here?" Belle nodded eagerly. "Yes, there are quests listed on the guild's notice boards. We just need to notify the guild if we accept one. Alternatively, we can accept quests directly from clients without involving the guild, like we did just now." Peter decided he would look into it later, his mind already racing with possibilities. With Jane's assistance, they could streamline their questing process and perhaps even tackle multiple quests simultaneously. Belle's voice betrayed a hint of concern as he posed the question, should we really be venturing to the 7th floor so soon? Yesterday's encounter on the 6th floor was quite harrowing. Peter offered reassurance, his tone confident, "That was yesterday. We didn't know how to fight the war shadows. Today, we're going in with proper preparation. We'll take proper precautions this time. Besides, didn't I defeat a level 5 opponent earlier? Clearly, I'm more than capable of handling even the lower floors." He then revealed their ambitious plan, and we're not stopping at the 7th floor today. I intend to push further, all the way to the 9th floor. Belle's initial surprise gave way to a mix of apprehension and determination as he processed Peter's words. With a resolute nod, he silently affirmed his commitment to the daunting task ahead. As Tiona, Ice, and Lefia meandered through the bustling streets of Orario, the air was alive with their light-hearted chatter. Having just completed their errands, delivering quest items and selling drop items to the Dian sect Familia, they found themselves with the rest of the morning free. Knowing that Finn had called for a meeting later in the day, they decided to make the most of their time with a leisurely shopping excursion. It was a rare break from their usual routine of dungeon exploration. Tiona's cheeks flushed crimson as her friends playfully teased her about her upcoming date with Peter. Lefia couldn't resist adding her own playful jab, "So, Tiona, is Peter taking you out for a candlelit dungeon crawl?" Tiona's attempts to respond only deepened her embarrassment, her words stumbling over each other in a futile attempt to hide her bashfulness. Meanwhile, Ice watched the exchange with a mix of amusement and discomfort, her usual stoic demeanor faltering in the face of her friend's antics. Their outing took an unexpected turn when Tione spotted a boutique showcasing Amazonian-style dresses. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she dragged Ice inside, much to Lefia's dismay. Ice, typically composed and reserved, found herself blushing furiously as Tione urged her to try on one of the revealing dresses. Lefia stood by, flustered and embarrassed by the whole situation, muttering something about cultural differences and stupid Amazons under her breath. Meanwhile, Tiona was busy trying on dresses for her own date, twirling and posing in front of the mirror with a mischievous grin. Amidst stifled giggles and encouraging cheers, Ice reluctantly obliged, tentatively posing in front of the mirror in the unfamiliar attire. Tiona couldn't contain her laughter at Ice's awkward attempts, teasing her, "Come on, Ice, work it." Lefia was appalled by her idol wearing such a revealing dress, pondered aloud whether all Amazonian dresses were simply variations of bikinis. Tione chimed in with mock approval, "Who needs armor when you've got fashion?" As they exited the boutique after completing their purchases, Ice breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to be back in her usual attire. Lefia shot Tione a disapproving glare, "You know, Tione, not all of us are as comfortable flaunting our assets as you are." Tione simply laughed in response, unfazed by Lefia's teasing. Tiona chimed in, "What's wrong with flaunting our assets?" Tione coughed out a chuckle and commented, "You need assets to flaunt them." Tiona countered, "You're just jealous that a man has fought for my affection. No one has done that for you." Tion retorted angrily, "A man did fight for me, our esteemed Captain Finn." Her eyes seemed to soften at the mention of Finn's name, almost forming the symbol of love. Tiona sighed dramatically. "Tion, you were 12 when Finn defeated you, and it wasn't for love but to get us to join the Familia. Finn doesn't love you, he's old enough to be your father." Tion's eyes narrowed with fury. "Finn loves me, and he's not that old, you flat-chested cunt. You." But before Tion could continue her tirade, Ice chimed in with her usual deadpan expression. "Finn doesn't love you, Tion. Everyone in the Familia knows that." Tion's face contorted with anger. "Not you too, Ice." She spat, her voice dripping with venom. Tiona tried to diffuse the tension with a laugh. "Ice is as dense as a rock, and even she knows that Finn doesn't have feelings for you." Tion resumed her barrage of insults aimed at Tiona. Ice, momentarily confused by the insult, pondered the comparison. "Being dense is good, right? The denser something is, the harder and stronger it is," she reasoned to herself. With newfound determination, she declared, "I am not as dense as a rock. I am denser, I'm as dense as steel. And I'm striving to be even denser, as dense as adamantite." Tiona and Tion, who had been on the brink of pulling each other's hair, froze at Ice's unexpected proclamation. They exchanged incredulous glances before bursting into laughter, the tension dissolving in an instant. Meanwhile, Lefia couldn't help but facepalm at her idol's sheer obliviousness, or should she call it density. Today's expedition on the 6th floor had proved to be considerably easier, thanks to Peter's quick reflexes and his web magic. With precision and agility, he had swiftly immobilized any war shadows that appeared, allowing them to dispatch the creatures without much difficulty. Even without relying on Peter's magic, Bell demonstrated remarkable prowess in combat. Despite facing challenges posed by the war shadow's long-clawed arms, he managed to defeat 2 of them. However, the creatures' extended reach had proved to be a formidable obstacle for him to overcome. The skirmish with the war shadows turned out to be disappointingly unprofitable. Each victory demanded the destruction of their crystals located behind their eyes, leaving them with minimal rewards for their efforts. They had only managed to obtain a single drop item, a knife-like claw, from the dozen war shadows they had encountered. As Bell and Peter descended deeper into the dungeon, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The 7th floor greeted them with an eerie silence, broken only by the faint rustling of unseen creatures in the darkness. Suddenly, a horde of killer ants emerged from the shadows, their red exoskeletons gleaming menacingly. Bell tightened his grip on his small knife, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. These creatures were far more formidable than anything he had encountered before. With lightning-fast reflexes, the killer ants lunged at Bell, their sharp claws poised to strike. Despite his best efforts, Bell found himself struggling to fend off the relentless onslaught. His small knife proved ineffective against the creatures' hard shells, and he soon found himself overwhelmed by their sheer numbers. Meanwhile, Peter moved with fluid grace, his movements precise and calculated. Armed only with a similar knife, he dispatched the killer ants with ease, his sheer strength overpowering their defenses. With each strike, he demonstrated a mastery of combat that left Bell in awe. As they pressed onward, they encountered a swarm of purple moths, their iridescent wings shimmering in the dim light. Bell hesitated, recalling Jane's warning about the creature's poisonous powder. But Peter charged forward fearlessly, his confidence unshaken. With a flick of his wrist, Peter sent forth his webs, swiftly ensnaring the purple moths before they could unleash their poisonous attacks. Bell watched in amazement as Peter effortlessly dispatched them with amazing speed and agility. Just when they thought they were in the clear, a group of needle rabbits appeared on the horizon, their horned heads bobbing menacingly. Peter couldn't resist a playful jab at Bell's expense. "Look, Bell, your cousins are here." Despite the light-hearted banter, Bell knew they were facing a formidable opponent. As the needle rabbits closed in, their sharp horns glinting in the dim light of the dungeon, Bell tightened his grip on his knife, steeling himself for the battle ahead. Peter, ever confident, readied himself beside Bell, his eyes gleaming with determination. With a nod between them, they sprang into action. Bell darted forward, his movements agile as he dodged the swift strikes of the needle rabbits, his small knife a blur as he attempted to land precise blows. However, the rabbits' speed proved to be a challenge, their relentless assaults keeping Bell on the defensive. Meanwhile, Peter weaved through the fray with graceful agility, his enhanced strength allowing him to deliver powerful strikes with his knife, swiftly dispatching the creatures one by one. With each precise strike, he joked with Belle, lightening the tension of the battle with his playful remarks. Belle couldn't help but feel a pang of awe at the vast difference in power between himself and Peter. Watching Peter effortlessly dispatch the killer ants before they even fully emerged from the walls made Belle acutely aware of how much he still had to learn. Peter's uncanny ability to anticipate the monsters' movements, seemingly aided by Jane's warnings, only emphasized Belle's own shortcomings. Determined to bridge the gap between them, Belle knew he had to push himself further. He had to become stronger, not just for himself, but to keep pace with Peter and, ultimately, to catch up to Ice. Love was a powerful motivator, and Belle was determined to prove himself worthy of her affection. Their search for Blue Papilio on the 7th floor proved fruitless, leaving them frustrated and empty-handed. It was only when Peter consulted Jane for guidance that they were led to a peculiar location, a monster pantry. Jane's comprehensive knowledge of the dungeon's layout proved invaluable, as she explained the purpose of these pantries, places where monsters gathered to feed on a nectar-like substance. Normally adventurers avoided the pantries as they tended to have high concentration of monsters. Jane's explanation resonated with their experiences as they stepped into the pantry, greeted by a cacophony of growls and fluttering wings. The sight of the bustling horde of monsters, killer ants, needle rabbits, and purple moths, was daunting, but amidst the chaos, 2 Blue Papilio flitted gracefully, their vibrant wings shimmering in the dim light. Belle's mind raced, contemplating their strategy against such overwhelming odds, when Peter's voice cut through the tension. "Electro web," he commanded, his movements swift and decisive. With a flick of his wrists, webs shot out, expanding into massive nets that ensnared the entire horde of monsters. Electricity crackled along the webs, jolting the creatures and causing them to convulse and smoke. In moments, the monsters lay motionless, subdued by the unexpected surge of power. As they surveyed the aftermath, Belle couldn't help but marvel at Peter's newfound ability. "Why didn't you use this magic yesterday?" he asked, his curiosity piqued by the revelation. Peter chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not magic, Belle. It's technology," he corrected, a wry grin playing on his lips. "It wouldn't have worked against those war shadows yesterday." Belle's brow furrowed in confusion. "Technology. Think of it as a different type of magic, one that doesn't rely on spells or incantations, but rather on machines and gadgets." Belle's confusion deepened at Peter's cryptic explanation, but before he could voice his questions, Jane's urgent warning interrupted them. "Most of the killer ants are still alive, and they're emitting pheromones," she interjected abruptly, her voice tinged with concern. "Oh shit, Peter muttered under his breath, his eyes widening with alarm. "Belle, kill the ants as fast as possible." With urgency propelling him forward, Peter lunged into action, knife poised to strike, swiftly dispatching the killer ants. Belle followed suit, matching Peter's fervor with each precise strike. But their efforts were soon overshadowed by the ominous sound of chittering echoing from all 3 tunnels leading into the pantry. As the chittering echoes grew louder, Peter and Belle exchanged a tense glance, their hearts sinking with the realization that they were about to be surrounded by an overwhelming swarm of ants. With no way out, they stood back to back in the heart of the monster pantry, preparing for the imminent onslaught. As the relentless tide closed in from all sides, darkness descended upon them, shrouding their fate in uncertainty. Chapter 12 Spider vs. Ants. Belle found himself pressed against the ceiling, ensnared in sticky webs that restricted his movements. Struggling against the tight bonds, he strained to free himself, his muscles taut with effort as he fought against the relentless hold of the webs. From this vantage point, he watched with a mix of awe and admiration as Peter single-handedly faced the onslaught of ants below. The grace with which Peter moved, the fluidity of his strikes, and the sheer power he wielded left Belle in silent wonder. Watching Peter's unmatched agility and skill in the midst of battle, a pang of inadequacy swept over Belle. He couldn't help but compare himself to his companion, recognizing the vast difference in their capabilities. In that moment of introspection, Belle came to a realization: Peter had suspended him above the fray not as a neglectful act, but to protect him. It was a sobering reminder of his own weaknesses, understanding that he would only hinder Peter's efforts, not enhance them. This recognition fueled Belle's determination to grow stronger, not just for his own sake, but to truly stand by Peter's side as an equal. He watched in awe as Peter cleared more than half of the pantry in a single leap, landing in a relatively clear spot amidst the sea of ants. With astonishing strength and agility, Peter ensnared an ant with his webs and began swinging it around like a whirlwind, a makeshift weapon of destruction. The ants formed a perimeter around him, their chittering growing frantic as Peter wielded his improvised wrecking ball, knocking out hordes of ants with each powerful swing. As Peter continued his relentless assault on the invading ants, his mind raced with strategies and tactics, each movement calculated with precision. Yet, he couldn't shake the pang of regret for underestimating his foes. The electro webs, designed to deliver a lethal shock, fell short against the ants' armored shells, merely stunning them instead of killing them. Regret gnawed at him as he remembered Jane's earlier warning about the ants emitting pheromones to call for backup if injured. He cursed himself for letting his guard down, for failing to heed her advice. As his makeshift weapon began to deteriorate under the strain of battle, Peter knew he needed a new approach. Discarding the ant carcass he had been wielding, Peter wasted no time in commanding Jane, "Activate instant kill." With swift compliance, Jane confirmed, "Instant kill mode activated." His Mosk's eyes ignited with a menacing red glow. Simultaneously, his HUD sprang to life, illuminating his enemy's weak points with light blue crosshairs, pinpointing the ants' brains and the crystals within their thoraxes. A surge of power surged through his web shooters, energizing them. With a subtle mechanical hum, the barrels of his web shooters extended out slightly, primed and ready to unleash their lethal payload upon the horde. With precision honed by years of experience and aided by AI, Peter aligned his web shooters towards his targets. His HUD seamlessly guided his aim, the crosshairs turning red as they locked onto each ant. In a rapid succession, he fired, unleashing fast-moving web spikes that punctured the ants' brains or shattered their crystals with lethal efficiency. Not a single shot missed, thanks to his AI-assisted targeting. Even as he unleashed his onslaught, Peter remained vigilant, his spider sense alerting him to incoming attacks from all sides. With lightning-fast reflexes, he expertly dodged the ants' assaults, evading their strikes with a dancer's grace. In a display of remarkable agility, Peter propelled himself upward, effortlessly adhering to the ceiling and flipping into an inverted position. From this inverted position, he continued to rain down a relentless storm of projectiles upon the swarming ants, each shot finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The killer ants began scaling the walls and advancing toward the ceiling, their relentless numbers threatening to overwhelm even Peter's rapid firing rate and deadly accuracy. "Peter!" Bell's urgent shout pierced the chaos, signaling danger as the ants closed in on his position where Peter had initially secured him to the ceiling for his own safety. Peter cursed under his breath, realizing the gravity of the situation. With a swift motion, he cancelled his spell, releasing Bell from his precarious perch, grateful for his foresight to use magic for securing Bell instead of his web shooters. Peter watched as Bell plummeted into the sea of ants below. To Peter's amazement, Bell displayed remarkable agility even amidst the chaos, plunging downward with his knife aimed at an ant's brain. With a ferocity born of necessity, Bell began slaughtering the ants with surprising speed and agility, despite the limitations imposed by his small blade. Peter couldn't help but marvel at Bell's progress since their previous dungeon dive, musing that it must be due to his skill, Liaris freeze. Continuing to provide cover fire for Bell, Peter fought to keep the relentless horde at bay, though he could feel the ants closing in on him as well. Despite the daunting odds, he noticed a glimmer of hope as the tide of battle slowly turned in their favor. It seemed the dungeon had reached its spawning limit, and the horde was thinning. Suddenly, Jane's urgent voice cut through the chaos, warning, "Web cartridges running low." Peter cursed inwardly, his mind racing for a solution. Desperation fueled his determination as he pondered if he could replicate the web spikes with his magic. With intense focus, he channeled his energy, shaping his magical webbing into spikes. While he managed to get the shape right, but they still remained disappointingly soft and sticky like his normal webs. With determination etched into every line of his face, Peter unsheathed his knife and leapt down toward Bell's besieged position. As he descended, he moved with the fluid grace of a predator, dispatching foes with swift, precise strikes. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that his cheap blade was no match for the relentless onslaught. With a sickening snap, it finally succumbed to the strain of his superhuman strength and the ants' resilient shells. Left with no other recourse, Peter abandoned the broken blade and prepared to fight with his bare hands. When Peter first gained his powers, his incredible strength often resulted in unintentional damage. He had accidentally torn a door from its frame when attempting to open it in the wrong direction. In another mishap, while trying to move a damaged car, he inadvertently bent its bodywork out of shape. As he grappled with his newfound abilities, he quickly learned the necessity of holding back, lest he inadvertently break something or, worse, harm someone. This lesson became a fundamental part of his approach to life, ingrained in his every action. In combat, he had to exercise even greater caution, fully aware that the slightest miscalculation could result in catastrophic consequences. It was a perpetual struggle, a delicate equilibrium between utilizing his formidable strength and preventing lasting harm, even to the villains he faced. But now, faced with an enemy that he knew wasn't truly alive, he stopped holding back. With each bone-crushing punch and bone-shattering kick, he tapped into reserves he had long kept restrained, unleashing his full power without hesitation. For the first time in his life, Peter went all out. His fists, once held back by fear of causing harm, became lethal weapons, crushing ant skulls with terrifying efficiency. His kicks sent bodies flying, cleaving through the horde like a scythe through wheat. Amidst the chaos, a small smile graced Peter's lips, a reflection of the exhilaration coursing through him. In this moment of unbridled fury, he felt liberated from the shackles of restraint, free to unleash his true potential. He realized, with a sense of awe, just how vastly superior he was to his adversaries. Sometime later, Bell knelt amidst the aftermath, his movements deft as he extracted the monster cores with practiced precision. Surrounding him were hundreds of ant corpses, their once formidable forms now reduced to lifeless husks. The scene felt eerily serene, like the aftermath of a tempest. Shivers ran down Bell's spine as he recalled Peter's ferocious onslaught, the memory etched vividly in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of Peter tearing through the monsters with the strength of a demon, his eyes ablaze with a primal intensity, glowing red like embers of a fire. In that moment, Peter had seemed to transcend mere mortal limits, transformed into a force of nature far more terrifying than any monster Bell had faced in the dungeon. This left Bell pondering the true nature of his fellow Familia member. He glanced at Peter, whose fists moved with precision, each strike targeting the crystal cores buried within the ant corpses. With every impact, the cores shattered, and the ants' remains crumbled into fine particles, dissipating into the air. It was evident that carrying all the monster cores they had slain would be impossible. Jane had advised them to destroy the excess monster cores. Both of them were completely covered in monster gore, the remnants of the fierce battle they had just endured. As Bell observed, he noticed the golden parts of Peter's armor begin to melt, the liquid metal shifting and swirling across his armor, magically cleansing it. In a matter of minutes, Peter's armor was restored to its pristine state. With seemingly boundless abilities at his disposal, Peter's prowess defied explanation, leaving Bell to question the depths of his own understanding. In that moment, Bell felt the weight of his own limitations pressing down on him like a suffocating blanket. Painful waves of inadequacy washed over him as he compared his meager accomplishments to Peter's overwhelming display of power. Glancing down at his torn clothing, remnants of the ants' vicious attacks, Bell's frustration intensified. Despite his wounds having healed thanks to restorative potions, stubborn bloodstains stubbornly marred his attire. He had spent most of the battle being safely stuck to the ceiling, and then he had slain only a few of the monsters, and yet he had still been injured. A surge of frustration coursed through Bell as he reflected on his position within their Familia. His fellow member possessed an impressive arsenal of skills, magic, and even the blessing of a spirit residing in his armor. In comparison, Bell felt woefully lacking. How could he ever hope to stand alongside someone so strong and enigmatic? These feelings of inadequacy stirred doubt within Bell's heart, casting shadows upon his resolve. He couldn't shake the nagging question of his own worthiness within their Familia, wondering if he would ever be able to contribute on the same level as Peter. He felt as though he was relegated to the role of a mere supporter, dutifully extracting monster stones while Peter dominated the battlefield. Bell glanced at their bags, both brimming to the point of overflowing. "The bags are full," he informed Peter, a tinge of frustration in his voice. With a casual flick of his wrist, Peter began weaving his webs, a mesmerizing display of his abilities. Within seconds, he crafted a bag made entirely of webbing and handed it over to Bell. "Use this," he said simply before returning to his task of destroying monster cores. Bell couldn't help but marvel at Peter's seemingly limitless abilities. As he accepted the makeshift bag, a sense of awe washed over him, mingled with a hint of envy. Was there any limit to what Peter could accomplish? It was a question that lingered in Bell's mind as he continued to extract the monster crystals. Peter and Bell approached the exchange counter at the guild. Despite Bell's attempts to tidy up, his clothes bore the evidence of their fierce battle, torn in places where he had been injured. Each of them carried 2 extra bags made of webbing, in addition to their backpacks, all filled to the brim with crystals. Peter had discovered that he could feel how much longer his magical webs would last. He found a way to extend their lifespan, by infusing them with additional magic, allowing them to carry such a large haul from the dungeon. As they emptied the contents of their bags into the exchange box, except for the blue papilio wings, Peter couldn't help but notice Ana's watchful gaze, which seemed to follow their every move like a hawk eyeing its prey from behind her counter. Her eyes darted between Belle's torn clothes and the mountain of loot they were exchanging, as if trying to solve some mysterious puzzle. "You better go reassure your girlfriend that you're fine," Peter suggested with a sly tone as he subtly gestured towards Ana. Belle's face turned a brilliant shade of red, his embarrassment palpable. "She's not my girlfriend," he stammered, the words tumbling out in a rush as he tried to save face. Peter's tone remained unchanged, his words carrying a hint of amusement. "If you say so." Despite the mask hiding his features, his teasing tone was unmistakable, leaving Belle squirming uncomfortably under Ana's scrutinizing gaze. Belle scurried off to Ana, his cheeks still tinged with embarrassment, while Peter remained at the counter as he observed the clerk assess their dungeon loot. On his mosque's HUD, Jane displayed the meticulous breakdown of the loot and its total valuation. Suddenly, Ana's voice pierced through the bustling atmosphere of the guild. "You went down to the 7th floor," she exclaimed, her astonishment echoing through the room. A moment later, her voice rose even louder, carrying across the entire guild hall, "Peter defeated a level 5. Peter let out a resigned sigh, his hand instinctively flying to pinch the bridge of his nose. It was as if Belle was a walking megaphone, blurting out their secrets to all the pretty faces he came across. Whispers spread like wildfire among the guild members and adventurers. "Who is this Peter guy? I heard rumors that a nobody level 1 challenged one of the Loki Familia's Hiryut sisters to a duel. I was there in the hostess yesterday when a guy challenged, the Crusher. I heard he actually won. Is he the one wearing the mask and the fancy armor?" Peter excused himself from the counter, assuring the clerk he'd be back in a jiffy, while the clerk remained focused on evaluating their loot. Striding over to Ana with frustration evident in his demeanor, he hissed, "Thanks for shouting out my secret to the entire guild. Your guild workers are the epitome of discretion." Ana, to her credit, flushed crimson with embarrassment and offered a sheepish apology. Ana's demeanor suddenly shifted, and she confronted Peter with a stern expression. "Why are you diving all the way down to the 7th floor already? You just became an adventurer yesterday. You'll end up getting Belle and yourself killed. I forbid you from venturing below the 5th floor," she declared, her glasses gleaming as she glared. Peter couldn't help but smirk beneath his mask, even though it wasn't visible. "And how, pray tell, are you planning to enforce this restriction? Are you going to join us in the dungeon to make sure we don't go too deep?" he quipped, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Ana gave one of her signature glares, her spectacle lenses suddenly gleaming like beacons of disapproval. Peter couldn't help but silently rate her glare as a solid 5/10. After all, she didn't have any actual power to back up that glare, but he decided to give her points for the effort. Merit where merit was due, right? However, when Ana turned her gaze towards Belle, who visibly squirmed under its effect, Peter mentally upped the score to an impressive 8/10. It seemed the glare had quite the impact on poor Belle. "How did you two manage to gather so many monster drops today?" Ana asked suspiciously, her tone brimming with skepticism. Belle began to stammer out an explanation, his words coming out in a jumbled mess. "We, went into the, 7th floor, monster pantry. There were some, injured ants, that attracted others with, pheromones." Ana's response was loud enough to shatter glass. "What?" Peter couldn't resist a sarcastic quip. "If you're planning to split our eardrums, try to raise your volume just a tad. Even a slight increase would do." Ana's glare intensified, directed now squarely at Peter. She hissed, "Do you have any idea how dangerous it is to go into the monster pantry? And those killer ants, do you know how many rookie adventurers they've killed?" Peter shrugged nonchalantly. "All I know is that they're super weak and easy to attract thanks to their pheromones. Real efficient way to make easy money, if you ask me," he said, clearly unfazed by Ana's disapproval. Ana sighed in frustration and turned to Belle. "If you're going to keep diving into the dungeon with this madman," she began, gesturing towards Peter, "then you need proper armor. I'd accompany you myself if I could, but with monsterphilia coming up, I can't take leave." Promise me you'll go to the 8th floor of Babel Tower tomorrow and buy some decent armor. Belle looked surprised. The 8th floor? Aren't all the weapons and armor shops in the Babel Tower owned by the Hephaestus familia? Those armors will be too expensive for someone like me. Aina nodded. That may be true for the lower floors, but on the upper floors, the goddess Hephaestus allows her lower-level familia members to sell their wares. They're just starting out and trying to make a name for themselves, so they offer their products at considerably lower prices. Peter chimed in with interest. I would also accompany you, Belle. I need to replace my knife, and I wouldn't mind browsing for some additional weapons. Belle's face lit up with a bright smile at the offer of company. Peter bid farewell to Aina and made his way back to the exchange counter, leaving Aina to continue lecturing Belle, who was probably feeling the heat of her frustration. As the clerk, a cat person, completed his assessment, he declared the total to be 230,000 valis. Peter, who could see the exact valuation of the loot on his HUD, politely countered, I'm sorry, but the total valuation is actually 243,000 valis. The clerk, taken aback by Peter's assertion, flushed with embarrassment, his cat-like instincts on full display. Are you doubting my assessment? He retorted, his ears flattening against his head in indignation and his tail twitching. His raised voice drew the attention of the other adventurers queued up at the exchange counters. Peter remained unfazed, responding confidently, we provided you with 12 frog shooter crystals, 2 war shadow claws, 12 needle rabbit crystals and 2 of their tusks, 10 purple moth wings, and 137 killer ant crystals along with 34 of their mandibles. So, the total obviously comes to 243,000 valis. The clerk squirmed under the scrutiny of the adventurers and Peter's firm insistence. Why don't you count the drops again in front of me? Peter suggested, his tone leaving no room for argument. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the crowd, echoing the accusation that the guild might be cheating them. Some of the adventurers chimed in, adding weight to Peter's demand. Yeah, why don't you count it again to verify his claim? They urged, their voices adding to the growing tension in the room. Even Belle and Aina, intrigued by the commotion, couldn't help but join the crowd to see what was happening. Suddenly, the clerk found himself at the center of attention, his feline instincts telling him he was in a precarious situation. He gulped nervously, realizing the gravity of the situation as whispers and murmurs filled the air. After all, he was just an unblessed person sitting across from a bunch of superhumans who could rip him apart with their bare hands if they wanted. A portly elf with snow-white hair, emerald eyes, and stout legs waddled forward, clad in a sharply tailored black suit that far outclassed the attire of his fellow guild workers. It was clear that this was no ordinary employee, this was Mr. Royman Mardial, the head of the guild. His presence demanded attention as he approached the scene of the unfolding commotion. What's happening here? He inquired with a tone of authority, fixing his gaze on the flustered clerk. The clerk stammered out an explanation, his words faltering under Mr. Royman's piercing scrutiny. Royman turned his attention to Peter, his disdainful expression softened slightly by the tension in the room and the glares of the other adventurers. With forced politeness, he asked, what seems to be the problem here, sir? Peter calmly recounted the situation, making his request with polite firmness. All I'm asking is for him to count my loot again in front of me to verify my claim or prove me wrong, he explained. The other adventurers echoed their support, voicing their suspicions. Why isn't he counting again? Clearly, he has something to hide, they murmured, their distrust palpable in the air. Mr. Royman assessed the situation with a critical eye, his mind already calculating the potential ramifications. As the overseer of the guild's operations, he had worked tirelessly to maintain their monopoly on monster crystals. While he had attempted to extend this control to other monster drop items, the independent dealings of adventurers with blacksmiths had proven to be a challenge. Yet, with the crystals, Royman had succeeded in establishing a lucrative business model. By mandating that all traders purchase their crystals exclusively from the guild, he had ensured a steady stream of revenue. His efforts had not gone unrewarded. His substantial salary was a testament to his success in this endeavor. However, managing adventurers was no easy task, especially when dealing with individuals possessing superhuman abilities. Royman and his fellow guild workers were unblessed, yet they were tasked with regulating and controlling these extraordinary individuals on a daily basis. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required finesse and careful management to prevent chaos from erupting within the guild's walls. While arguments at the exchange counters were a common occurrence, this situation felt notably distinct. The members of the Soma Familia were notorious for their daily disputes and accusations of the guild cheating them. However, this masked adventurer approached the situation with a level of politeness and determination that Royman found unsettling. Observing the confidence exuded by the masked individual, Royman couldn't shake the suspicion that this bastard had meticulously tallied and evaluated his loot before presenting it. Unlike most adventurers, who often struggled with even basic arithmetic, this one seemed different. Royman grimaced at the memory of deciphering tax reports submitted by Familia captains, a task that often left him with pounding headaches. Yet, this masked figure possessed a sharpness that set him apart. Royman, who had painstakingly built the guild's monopoly over the course of a century, understood the gravity of the situation. If word got out that loot assessments were unreliable, it would undermine the foundation of trust that upheld the guild's authority. He knew he had to act swiftly to resolve this issue to prevent any potential damage to their long-standing reputation and control. Leaning in close, Royman whispered a directive into the clerk's ear, his voice low and urgent. Clearing his throat, the clerk addressed Peter with an apology. "I apologize for the mistake, sir. Your total valuation is indeed 243,000 valis." As the adventurers continued their murmurs of discontent, Peter requested the loot to be divided into 3 equal shares. Bell's eyes widened in amazement at the sheer amount of valis they were receiving for their loot. It was a staggering sum, far surpassing anything they had earned the day before, more than 10 times over, in fact. As some curious adventurers approached Peter, asking how he knew the exact valuation of the